The message arrived at exactly midnight, Earth time. Ambassador Park was sitting alone in her small office on the orbital station when her screen lit up with the golden seal of the Galactic Council. She read the words slowly, her face showing nothing. Beside her, a cup of tea grew cold. The door opened, and Lieutenant walked in. He was a tall man with sharp eyes and the kind of body that came from years of military training. He saw the seal on her screen and stopped walking. "What do they want?" he asked. Turned the screen so he could read it. His jaw tightened as his eyes moved across the words. "Resource Allocation Review," he read aloud. "That's what they're calling it now." "It sounds better than what it really is," said. Her voice was calm, like she was discussing the weather. Sat down heavily in the chair across from her. "They want to take Earth. They want to divide our solar system among themselves like pieces of meat." "Yes. And we have 3 days to convince them not to." "Yes." Leaned forward. "How are you so calm about this? This is everything. This is humanity's survival." Finally looked at him. Her eyes were dark and steady. "Being angry will not help us. Being afraid will not help us. Only thinking will help us." She stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the stars stretched forever into the black. Somewhere out there, thousands of alien species lived on millions of worlds. Humanity was just one small voice among them. A new voice. A weak voice, according to everyone else. 50 years ago, humans had finally reached the stars. They had been so excited, so hopeful. They thought they would find friends among the aliens. Instead, they found a galaxy that had been running for millions of years without them. The other species looked at humans the way humans might look at insects. Interesting, perhaps, but not important. The Galactic Council had allowed Earth to join as a provisional member. This meant humans could trade and travel, but they had no real power, no vote that mattered, no protection that could not be taken away. And now, it seemed, someone had decided that humans had been tolerated long enough. "Who requested the review?" asked. "The Dominion. High Delegate signed the petition." Made a sound of disgust. "The lizards, I should have known." Did not correct his language. The did look like large reptiles, with scales and cold eyes and a love for cruelty that they called natural order. They were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of worlds over thousands of years. "Has wanted Earth since we first appeared," she said. "He sees our planet as a prize, our oceans, our forests, our minerals, and our people as workers." "Slaves, you mean?" He would use a different word, but yes. Stood up and began packing. "We have a fleet. It's small, but we have ships. We have weapons. We could fight. Against the alone, perhaps we could delay them for a few months. But they will not come alone. The Syndicate of wants our oceans. The merchant clans want our position in the shipping lanes. Half the galaxy will support this review because they all want a piece of what we have. So what do? Just accept it. Let them take everything." Turned from the window. For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. It might have been anger. It might have been something else. "No," she said quietly, "we do not accept it." She walked to her desk and opened a drawer. Inside was a simple black folder. She had kept it locked away for 3 years, waiting for this moment. She had hoped it would never come, but she had prepared for it anyway. "What is that?" asked. "Insurance." She did not explain further. Instead, she picked up her and began typing. "We leave for Prime in 6 hours. The hearing will be held in the Grand Assembly Chamber. Every species in the Council will be watching." "And you have a plan?" Looked at him. "I have the beginning of a plan. The rest will depend on what I learn when we arrive." "Learn? What is there to learn? They hate us. They want what we have. End of story." "No," shook her head slowly. "That is never the end of the story. Everyone has secrets. Everyone has fears. Everyone has something they do not want others to know. The Syndicate, all of them. They pretend to be powerful and united, but underneath, they are just as afraid as anyone else. Afraid of what? That is what I need to find out. Studied her face. He had worked with Ambassador Park for 5 years. In that time, he had seen her face angry politicians, hostile aliens, and situations that would have broken anyone else. She never raised her voice. She never lost control. And somehow, she always found a way through. But this was different. This was not a trade negotiation or a border dispute. This was everything. "Do you really think we can win?" he asked. Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "I think that everyone in that chamber will expect us to beg. They will expect us to plead for mercy. They will expect us to act like the weak, frightened species they believe we are." She picked up the black folder and held it against her chest. "I intend to show them something different." Nodded slowly. He did not fully understand her plan, but he understood her, and that was enough. "I'll prepare the ship," he said. "Thank you." He paused at the door. "Ambassador, whatever happens at that hearing, I want you to know that I'll follow you, no matter what." Smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. "I know," she said. "That's why I chose you." After he left, sat alone in the darkness. She opened the black folder and looked at the files inside. 50 years of watching, 50 years of learning, 50 years of preparing for the day when the galaxy would try to swallow humanity whole. That day had come. And Park was ready. Prime was the largest space station in the known galaxy. It floated in neutral space, belonging to no one and everyone at the same time. Here, species that had been enemies for thousands of years walked the same halls and pretended to be civilized. Park stepped off her ship and felt the weight of 1,000 eyes upon her. Word had spread fast. Everyone knew why she was here. Everyone knew what was about to happen. Walked beside her, his hand never far from the weapon at his hip. He trusted no one in this place. The station was beautiful in a cold way. The walls were made of pale stone brought from a dozen different worlds. Light came from crystals that had been grown, not built. Everything was designed to show power and age. Humanity had nothing like this. "Ambassador Park." The voice came from ahead. A tall figure approached them, moving with the slow confidence of a predator that had never known fear. High Delegate of the Dominion. He was impressive to look at if you liked reptiles. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his eyes were yellow with thin slits for pupils. He wore robes of gold and red, the colors of his empire. "High Delegate," said. She bowed her head slightly. Not too much, just enough to be polite. "I wanted to welcome you personally," said. His voice was smooth and cold. "It must be difficult coming all this way just to hear bad news." "The hearing has not happened yet. The news is not decided." Made a sound that might have been laughter. "You are young, Ambassador. Your whole species is young. You do not understand how these things work. The review is already finished. The votes are already counted. What happens in 3 days is just ceremony." "Then why hold the ceremony at all?" "Because we are civilized," smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "We give the condemned a chance to speak before the end. It is tradition." Stepped forward, but raised a hand to stop him. "Thank you for the welcome, High Delegate," she said. "I look forward to the hearing." Studied her for a long moment. Something in her calmness seemed to bother him. He had expected fear. He had expected anger. He had not expected this quiet, steady woman who looked at him like she was memorizing every scale on his face. "Enjoy your stay," he said finally. Then he turned and walked away. When he was gone, let out a breath. "I hate him." "Good, use that, but do not show it." They continued walking through the station. Everywhere they went, aliens watched them, some with curiosity, some with pity, some with hunger. That evening, there was a reception in the diplomatic hall. All the major powers were there. It was supposed to be a social event, but everyone knew it was really a chance to measure each other before the battle began. Moved through the crowd like a ghost, she spoke little, she listened much, she watched everything. Chancellor of the Syndicate of found her near the window. Was, with 4 arms and large compound eyes that reflected the lights of the room. Her voice clicked and buzzed when she spoke. Ambassador Park, such a shame about the review. Earth is such a pretty planet, all that water, all those resources. It would be sad to see it wasted on a species that cannot appreciate it. We appreciate it very much, said. Do you? Your people poison your own air. You kill your own forests. You fight wars over imaginary lines on the ground. Perhaps Earth would be better served by better caretakers. And the Syndicate would be happy to volunteer. Mandibles clicked together. We would consider it our duty. Nodded slowly. I understand. Tell me, Chancellor, how are things on Prime? I heard there have been some difficulties with your food production. Went very still. Where did you hear that? Here and there. Rumors spread. I also heard that your Western colonies are unhappy with the new taxation policies, and that there was an incident at the mining facility that was never made public. The compound eyes seemed to darken. You know a great deal for someone from such a young species. We learn fast. Stared at her for a long moment. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away. Appeared at side. What was that about? Planting seeds, said. Come, there is someone else I need to meet. She led him to a quiet corner of the room where a single figure stood alone. This was observer of the Ascended Collective. No one knew exactly what was. The collective was the oldest and most mysterious of all the powers. They rarely spoke. They never explained themselves. And they had never, in recorded history, voted against a species dissolution. Was tall and thin, wrapped in robes that hid everything. Where a face should have been, there was only shadow. Observer said. Did not respond, did not move, but felt something press against her mind, a question without words. I wanted to introduce myself, she continued, and to ask why the collective is interested in Earth. Silence. We are small, we are weak, we have nothing that would interest beings as old as yours, and yet you are here. You always attend these reviews. You always vote to end species that others want ended. Why? More silence. Then finally, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. We observe, we record, we remember. Remember what? Everything that was, everything that is, everything that will be. And what will be for Earth? The shadows under the hood seemed to shift. That remains to be seen. Then drifted away, leaving alone with her thoughts. Later that night in her small quarters met with someone else, a young alien from a species called the. They had been a Category D species once, just like humanity. 20 years ago they had faced their own review. They had lost. The young was named. She was small, with soft blue skin and large dark eyes that held a deep sadness. They will not listen to you, said. We tried everything, we begged, we bargained, we offered them anything they wanted. In the end, it did not matter. They had already decided. What happened to your people? Those who survived were scattered across a dozen worlds. We work in their factories. We serve in their houses. We are useful, they say, too useful to destroy, not important enough to free. Reached out and took small hand. I am sorry. Do not be sorry, be smart, be different, be something they do not expect. What do you mean? Looked at her with those sad, ancient eyes. Every species that faces the review tries to show their strength. They try to prove they deserve to survive, but the Council does not care about strength. They only care about power, about control, about keeping things the way they have always been. Then how do we change it? Leaned closer. You do not change them, you cannot. They are too old, too set in their ways, but you can make them afraid. You can show them that destroying you would cost more than letting you live. was silent for a long moment. How? That I cannot tell you, but I will say this: they fear nothing about humanity right now. That is why you will lose, unless you can give them something to fear. After left sat alone in the darkness. She thought about fear. She thought about power. She thought about the black folder and everything inside it. And slowly, a plan began to form. The Grand Assembly Chamber was the largest room had ever seen. It stretched upward like the inside of a mountain, with thousands of seats carved into the walls in rising circles. Every seat was filled. Every eye was watching. At the center of the chamber was a small platform. This was where the accused would stand. This was where humanity would be judged. Walked to the platform alone, wanted to come with her, but she had refused. This was something she had to do herself. She wore simple clothes, the same as always. No decorations, no symbols of rank, just a small woman standing in front of the galaxy. The noise of the crowd slowly died. Silence spread like water filling a bowl. High Delegate rose from his seat in the upper circle. His golden robes caught the light as he spread his arms wide. "We gather today for a sacred duty," he announced. His voice filled the chamber, amplified by hidden speakers. "The Resource Allocation Review exists to ensure that the galaxy's treasures are not wasted on those who cannot appreciate them. Today, we review the case of Earth." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "Humanity has been a provisional member of this council for 50 years. In that time, they have contributed nothing of value. Their science is primitive. Their culture is chaotic. Their history is a long record of violence and self-destruction." Pulled up a holographic display. Images appeared in the air above his head. Wars, pollution, poverty, the worst moments of human history displayed for everyone to see. They poison their own planet. They kill their own kind over differences in skin color and belief. They cannot even agree among themselves about basic facts of reality. Laughter rippled through the chamber, did not move. Their military is laughable. Their fleet is the size of a minor trading company. Their weapons are generations behind even the most basic galactic standard. Turn to face the assembly. "I ask you, honored delegates, what value does Earth offer? What reason exists to protect a species that cannot even protect itself?" The chamber erupted in agreement. Voices called out from every direction: remove their protection, open their space, divide their resources. 1,000 different species, all hungry for a piece of what humanity had. When the noise finally faded, looked down at with cold satisfaction. "The accused may speak." Stood still for a moment. Then she walked to the center of the platform and looked up at the thousands of faces watching her. "High Delegate," she said. Her voice was quiet, but the speakers carried it to every corner of the chamber. "How old is the Dominion?" Blinked, this was not what he had expected. "What?" "Your empire, how long has it existed?" 14,000 years, he said proudly. "We were building cities when your ancestors were still climbing trees." "And in those 14,000 years, how many other species have you conquered?" The question landed like a stone in still water. The chamber went quiet. "That is not relevant to." "How many?" His eyes narrowed. 37 species have been brought under protection. Protection. Let the word sit in the air. And how many of those species still exist as independent peoples? Silence. "None," she answered for him. "All 37 were absorbed into your empire, their cultures erased, their languages forgotten, their planets renamed." She turned to face Chancellor. "Chancellor, the syndicate of has existed for 9,000 years. How many worlds have you absorbed in that time?" His mandibles clicked nervously. 22, but those were voluntary unions. Were they? The records suggest otherwise. The records suggest that at least 15 of those worlds were taken by force, their populations relocated to serve in your factories. The chamber was completely silent now. No one had ever spoken to the powers this way. No one had ever dared. Continued around the room. The merchant clans, 11 species displaced. The coalition of worlds, 8 species eliminated. The federated systems, 19 species reduced to servant status. She listed them all, names that had been forgotten, peoples who no longer existed, the true cost of galactic civilization. When she finished, she returned to the center of the platform. You ask what value Earth offers. You point to our short history and call it weakness. You point to our small fleet and call it failure. She paused. But I look at this chamber, and I see something interesting. I see species that have existed for thousands of years, species that have conquered and destroyed and consumed everything in their path, species that measure their greatness by how many others they have erased. Her voice grew stronger. Humanity has existed as a spacefaring species for 300 years. In that time, we have conquered no one, absorbed no one, displaced no one. We have fought no wars of expansion. We have taken no planets by force. We have erased no cultures, forgotten no languages, renamed no worlds. She looked directly at. And yet you consider us the threat worth reviewing. The chamber stirred. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned forward with new interest. Recovered quickly. Pretty words, Ambassador, but words do not change reality. You are weak. Weakness is not a virtue. It is merely an invitation. An invitation to what? To those who are stronger. The galaxy has always belonged to the powerful. That is the natural order. That is how things are. Nodded slowly. You are right, High Delegate. The galaxy has always belonged to the powerful, and the powerful have always looked at the weak and seen only prey. She paused. But I wonder if you have ever stopped to consider what the weak see when they look at you. Frowned, what do you mean? I mean that for 50 years humanity has been watching, learning, remembering. You dismissed us as insignificant, so you never bothered to hide anything from us. You spoke freely in our presence. You left your secrets unguarded around us. You assumed we were too primitive to understand, too weak to matter. She tilted her head slightly to one side. You were wrong. At that exact moment, every screen in the chamber flickered. Every display changed. Every holographic projector showed the same thing: files, thousands of files, documents, recordings, images, data. The secrets of empires, laid bare for all to see. The chamber erupted into chaos. And in the center of it all, Park stood perfectly still, watching with quiet, patient eyes. The game had changed, and humanity was no longer prey. The chaos lasted for several minutes. Delegates screamed at each other. Some tried to shut down the displays, but the files kept appearing, faster than they could be deleted. Guards rushed toward the platform, but they did not know who to arrest or what crime had been committed. Did not move. She stood at the center of the storm, calm as a stone in a river. The files showed everything. Trade agreements that were supposed to be secret. Military positions that no one should have known. Private communications between leaders who publicly called each other friends while privately planning betrayals. Evidence of crimes that had been buried for centuries. Every major power in the chamber was exposed. Every empire had something to hide. And now, everyone could see everyone else's sins. High Delegate finally managed to shut down the displays in his section. His scales had gone pale with rage. He pointed a clawed finger at. This is an act of war, he roared. You have attacked the sovereignty of the Dominion. I have done nothing of the sort, said. Her voice was still calm. I have simply shared information. Is sharing information an act of war? You stole our secrets. No, we watched. We listened. We remembered. None of your data systems were breached. None of your communications were intercepted by illegal means. Everything you see here was gathered through observation, through patience, through paying attention to things you assumed no one would notice. Chancellor rose from her seat. Her compound eyes were dark with fury. How is this possible? We have the most advanced security in the galaxy. No primitive species could. And that is exactly why we could. Turned to face her. You were so certain of your superiority that you never considered us a threat. Your guards ignored us. Your diplomats spoke freely around us. Your systems had no protocols for monitoring humans because you believed we lacked the intelligence to be dangerous. She paused. You created your own blind spot. We simply lived in it. The chamber had grown quieter now. The initial panic was fading, replaced by something else. Fear. Real fear. For the first time, the great powers of the galaxy were looking at humanity and seeing something other than prey. Observer's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Ambassador Park. Everyone turned. The observer had risen from their seat. The shadows beneath the hood seemed deeper than before. You have made an interesting point, but rhetoric and stolen secrets do not change the fundamental equation. Earth is still weak. Your fleet is still insignificant. Your weapons are still primitive. Drifted down from the upper circle, moving without seeming to walk. Information can be recovered. Secrets can be changed. Embarrassment fades. In a year, perhaps two, everything you have revealed will be forgotten and then what will protect you? The chamber held its breath, looked at the observer for a long moment. Then she tilted her head again, that same slight movement she had made before. You are correct, she said. Information alone is not enough. That is why the files you have seen today represent only a small portion of what we have collected. How small? Approximately 0.3%. The silence that followed was absolute. The remaining 99.7% contains significantly more: sensitive material, weapons designs, defensive weaknesses, political leverage, evidence of actions that would cause wars if revealed. Stepped forward, you're bluffing. MI raised a hand. Lieutenant. From the upper gallery, his voice rang out. The display showed only what we chose to show. Allow me to demonstrate what we chose not to show. A new image appeared on one of the screens. It was a map of a solar system, the home system. On the map, 17 locations were marked in red. These are the positions of hidden military installations that the Dominion believes are secret, said, including the facility at 7, which is currently developing weapons banned under the Galactic Accord. His face went from pale to white. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Another image appeared, this time showing the syndicate of. These are records of illegal resource extraction from protected worlds, worlds that were supposed to be preserved under the Environmental Charter. The syndicate has been stripping them bare for over 200 years. Made a sound like something breaking. More images, more secrets, every major power exposed in seconds, not everything, just enough to show what humanity knew, just enough to make them understand. Spoke again. You asked what value Earth offers. You asked what we contribute. Now you know, we watch, we learn, we remember. For 50 years while you dismissed us, we studied you. Every treaty, every war, every secret, every lie. She looked around the chamber. You are correct that we cannot defeat you militarily. If you combine your forces, you could destroy our fleet in hours. You could take our planet in days. You could eliminate our species in weeks. Her voice dropped. But you cannot do it quietly. You cannot do it without consequences. Because the moment Earth falls silent, every secret we hold will be released, automatically, simultaneously, to everyone. She let that sink in. Imagine it, every alliance shattered, every crime exposed, every hidden war made public, the fighting the syndicate, the coalition fighting the Federation, 1,000 old grudges suddenly given fresh fuel. She smiled. It was a small smile, a quiet smile. We cannot win a war, but we can make sure that whoever starts one loses everything." Observer stood motionless for a long moment. "You would destroy the galaxy to save yourselves." "No, we would expose the truth. If that destroys the galaxy, then perhaps the galaxy was built on a foundation that deserved to fall." The observer made a sound that might have been laughter, or might have been something else entirely. "Remarkable, truly remarkable. In 10,000 years of observation, I have never seen a species choose this path." "What path?" "Most species, when facing extinction, fight, or surrender, they play the game by the rules that exist. They try to be stronger or they accept their weakness. But you," shadowed head tilted, "you changed the game entirely." Met the observer's gaze without flinching. "We are human. It is what we do." The chamber was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. The great powers of the galaxy, the ancient empires that had ruled sat frozen in their seats. They had come here expecting to carve up a weak species like meat. Instead, they had discovered that the meat had teeth. And the teeth were sharp enough to bite back. The chamber remained frozen for what felt like hours. Then, slowly, the delegates began to move, to whisper, to calculate. This was what they did best, after all. They were politicians, survivors. They had not built empires by making emotional decisions. They had built them by understanding power. And the power in this room had just shifted. High Delegate was the first to speak. His voice was controlled now, the rage pushed down beneath a mask of cold logic. "You have made a mistake, Ambassador. You have shown us that you are a threat. Threats must be eliminated." "Must they?" asked. "Look around you, High Delegate. Look at the faces of your allies. Do you think they will join you in destroying Earth now that they know we hold their secrets too?" Looked around the chamber. He saw what saw. The other delegates were not looking at humanity with unified hatred. They were looking at each other with suspicion. Old enemies were calculating new risks. Old allies were wondering what secrets had been gathered about them. Chancellor spoke up. "If we destroy Earth, their information will be released." You heard what she said. A bluff insisted. "Is it? Are you willing to bet your empire on that? Because I am not willing to bet mine." The merchant clan's representative raised a hand. "Perhaps there is another option. Perhaps we should discuss this more carefully before making any decisions." "Discuss," turned on him. "We came here to vote. We came here to end this." "We came here to protect the interests of our peoples," the merchant said. "My interest is not served by starting a war that exposes our trade secrets to the entire galaxy." Arguments erupted across the chamber. Alliances that had stood for centuries began to crack. Delegates who had arrived united against humanity were now fighting among themselves. Through it all watched and waited. Finally, Observer raised a hand. The chamber fell silent instantly. When the Observer spoke, everyone listened. "I believe," said slowly, "that the circumstances of this review have changed. The original motion was to remove Earth's protection and open their territory for redistribution. I move to withdraw that motion." Slammed his fist against his seat. "You cannot. The collective has never. The collective has never voted against dissolution because no species has ever given us reason to reconsider. Until now." Turned to face the full assembly. "The human ambassador has demonstrated that her species possesses something rare. Not strength, not technology, not numbers, but perspective. They see the galaxy as it truly is. They see us as we truly are, and they have chosen not to become what we are." The observer's voice carried something almost like respect. "In 10,000 years, no species has passed through this chamber without either conquering or being conquered. Humanity is the first to refuse both options, the first to find a third path. Looked at. The ascended collective changes its position. We recommend that Earth be elevated to Category B status, with full territorial sovereignty and permanent representation on the security directorate. The chamber exploded, screamed that it was impossible, demanded explanations. A dozen other delegates shouted questions and objections, but the motion had been made, and when the observer made a motion, no one voted against it. The vote was held that same hour. It was not unanimous, nothing ever was in galactic politics, but it was overwhelming. Humanity's protection was not just maintained, it was strengthened. Earth was recognized as a permanent member of the galactic community, with rights that could never be taken away by simple majority. When the announcement was made, allowed herself to close her eyes for just a moment, just long enough to feel the relief that she had not permitted herself to feel until now. They had won that evening and boarded their ship to return home. The station's corridors were quieter now. The delegates who had mocked humanity that morning now stepped aside when passed. They did not bow. They did not show respect in any obvious way, but they moved. And that was enough. Once they were safely in space, finally asked the question that had been burning in his mind. Did we really have all that intelligence, all those locations, all those secrets? Looked out the window at the stars. We had enough. Enough to back up the threat. Enough to make them believe we could. Was quiet for a moment, and if they had called our bluff, if it attacked anyway, then we would have released what we had, and hoped it was enough to cause chaos, enough to give Earth time to prepare, enough to make destroying us cost more than it was worth. But you weren't certain. No, turned to face him. I was never certain. I simply did not let them see my uncertainty. Shook his head slowly. The whole galaxy thought we were weak. They thought we were nothing, and you just changed their minds with information, with words. With patience, 50 years of patience, 50 years of watching while they ignored us, 50 years of preparing for this day, she smiled. They thought our short lives made us inferior. They never considered that it also makes us focused. We do not have thousands of years to build empires. We have to be efficient. The ship hummed around them as they traveled through the darkness between stars. Home was still far away, but it was safe now. Protected not by weapons or walls, but by something more powerful. Fear had one more question. What happens now? We've shown them what we can do. They'll be more careful. They'll hide their secrets better. They'll watch us like we watched them. Nodded. Yes, the game will become harder, but that is good. It means they finally see us as equals, as players, not pieces. She looked back at the stars. The galaxy will never love humanity. We are too strange, too unpredictable, too willing to change the rules when the rules do not serve us. But they will respect us now. They will think twice before threatening us, and that is all we ever needed. Behind them, Prime grew smaller and smaller, until it was just another point of light among millions. Ahead Earth waited, blue and green and white, small and fragile and beautiful. And protected. Not because humanity was strong, not because humanity was powerful, but because humanity had learned the oldest lesson in the universe, that knowledge is the greatest weapon and patience is the greatest strength. The galaxy had spent 50 years underestimating them. It would not make that mistake again. Settled into her seat and closed her eyes. For the first time in weeks, she slept peacefully. The stars continued to shine. And somewhere among them, a small blue world kept turning, kept growing, kept watching. Because that is what humans do. They survive. They adapt. They overcome. And they never, ever stop learning.